You think every horror movie ever made is out there just waiting to be streamed? Not quite. Some films were made in full, written, shot, edited, and then vanished before a single audience could truly witness them. Not because they were flawed, but because something or someone ensured they wouldn't survive. There exists a forgotten archive, a graveyard of complete horror films that were buried by scandal, legal chaos, ruined studios, or fear of their own content. Some were shown once, then sealed away. Others were never released at all. A few have re-emerged, twisted, incomplete, barely recognizable from their original form, and some are still missing entirely. These aren't urban legends. They're real productions, with actors, cameras, scripts, and silent. Prints lost in fires, rights tangled in international collapse, directors dead before post-production finished, or films so disturbing that executives locked them away out of pure dread. Each title we'll explore was finished. Each one was erased. And each one has clawed its way back into the whispers of horror history. So dim the lights, step inside the vault, and brace yourself, because not every film that vanishes stays gone. 1. London After Midnight, 1927, the most famous vampire you've never seen. Directed by Todd Browning and starring the legendary Lon Chaney, London After Midnight was a silent-era horror milestone. Chaney's ghoulish appearance, top hat, sharp teeth, hypnotic eyes, haunted audiences, and burned itself into pop culture iconography. But in 1965, the last known print was destroyed in an MGM vault fire, and just like that, the film vanished. Only still photographs and the original script remain. Despite endless searching, no surviving copy has surfaced. Not in private collections, not in foreign archives. A photo reconstruction was created, but it's a shadow of the real thing. This isn't just a lost movie. It's the holy grail of horror, and maybe that's where it's safest. 2. Grizzly 2, The Predator, 1980. 3. Released 2020. Big names, bigger monster. No one saw it until it was too late. Grizzly 2 was designed to cash in on the unexpected success of Grizzly, 1976, a nature-gone-wrong horror flick with a killer bear. This time, the stakes were higher. They had a bigger budget, a full festival concert set, and a cast that would one day become A-list. George Clooney, Laura Dern, Charlie Sheen. But then, everything collapsed. The mechanical bear malfunctioned. The funding vanished. The producer disappeared under a cloud of fraud. What was left was reels of disconnected footage with no one left to finish them. For nearly 4 decades, the film lived in rumor until 2020, when someone finally assembled a version from what remained. The result? A time capsule of chaos, awkward, surreal, stitched together like a Frankenbear in celluloid form. Some monsters don't die, they hibernate in editing room. 3. Begotten, 1989. There's no comfort in this ritual, only rot. Begotten opens with a deity slicing itself open in a barren black and white wasteland. No dialogue, no exposition, just agony, birth, and the slow decay of what might be humanity. Elias Merihige crafted the film like a blasphemous myth unfolding in grain, flicker, and unbearable silence. It screened a few times, then dropped out of sight. Distributors passed. Theaters rejected it. Even horror festivals backed away. It became an underground artifact, passed from one disturbed viewer to another. Still today, clean copies are rare. Most people experience it like it was meant to be found, degraded, disturbing, and unexplained. This wasn't a story. It was a cinematic wound. 4. The Poughkeepsie Tapes, 2007. What's worse than a snuff film? One that pretends not to be. The Poughkeepsie Tapes was marketed in 2007 as a fictional documentary built from found home videos of a serial killer. It was grim, unflinching, and disturbingly convincing. So convincing, in fact, that its release was pulled at the last second without explanation. Some said the footage resembled real crimes. Others believed it blurred ethics too far. Whatever the truth, the film was buried. No theatrical run, no DVD, just trailer fragments and whispers online. Years later, a release trickled out, but even then, fans suspected it was softened. The original cut, if one existed, is still the stuff of hushed forums and speculation. Sometimes, pretending to be real gets too close to actually being real. 5. The Other Side of the Wind, 1970 seconds, 2018. He tried to finish the film. The film finished him first. The Other Side of the Wind was Orson Welles' final passion project, a meta-satirical spiral about a fading film director obsessed with legacy, art, and his own unraveling. It was part mockumentary, part fever dream, and strangely prophetic. Wells himself died before it could be completed. Production wrapped in the 1,970 seconds. But what followed was 4 decades of legal purgatory money tied up in Iran, reels scattered across Europe, and paperwork that seemed cursed. The film became the stuff of myth. In 2018, thanks to Netflix and a group of dedicated archivists, the footage was finally reconstructed. But what we now see is only a shadow of what Wells might have intended. There are films you wait years to see. This one waited 40 and still feels unfinished. 6. Night of the Demon, 1957. Some legend don't survive censorship. Night of the Demon, directed by Jacques Tourneur, was intended as a psychological nightmare where the real terror was suggestion, not spectacle. In his original vision, the monster was never shown, only felt, hinted at, like a curse crawling under the skin. But the studio didn't agree. Against Tourneur's wishes, they inserted footage of a literal demon early in the film and again in the climax. The original cut was discarded or hidden away. What we're left with is still chilling, but fans, critics, and the director himself agree. The unseen version was more terrifying. It's not what the camera shows, it's what someone decided you shouldn't see. 7. Symptoms, 1974. Some homes don't echo, they absorb. Symptoms is a haunting chamber piece about a woman slipping slowly into psychological collapse. Set in an English countryside mansion, the film unfolds with whispered voices, reflections that blink back, and a growing sense that something unspeakable has already happened. It was completed and screened at Cannes as the UK's official entry. Then, silence. Due to complicated rights issues and poor distribution, it all but disappeared. For decades, it became a ghost title mentioned in film books, but never seen. Only in the 2010 seconds was a single print discovered, restored, and released. Its return felt less like a rediscovery, and more like a seance summoning a film that had refused to die quietly. 8. The Keep, 1983. The walls weren't built to defend, they were built to trap something in. The Keep, directed by Michael Mann, is a film drenched in mood, myth, and malfunction. Set in World War II, it follows Nazi soldiers occupying an ancient fortress in the Carpathians, only to awaken a presence that predates their cruelty. But the version released in theaters was barely a skeleton. The original cut, said to be nearly 3 hours long, vanished during post-production chaos after the editor's sudden death. Paramount hacked it down to under 100 minutes. Whole character arcs, visual sequences, and emotional threads disappear. The result is a film that feels broken but still mesmerizing, a surreal fever dream haunted by what's missing as much as what's shown. The demon wasn't just on screen, it was in the reels that were never seen again. 9. Don't Go to Sleep, 1982. She's gone, but someone forgot to close the door. Don't Go to Sleep tells the story of a grieving family and the young daughter who starts hearing her dead sister's voice again. At first, it's comforting. Then it becomes something else, something cold, calculating, and increasingly violent. The film aired once on television, then was shelved indefinitely. No VHS, no official release, no digital archive. For many who saw it, the memory became blurred, half-remembered dreams of a ghost that might never have existed. Only years later did bootleg tapes begin to re-emerge, proving that the nightmare had been real all along. When grief knocks twice, sometimes it's not your loved one standing at the door. 10. Dark August, 1976. Not all curses wear robes, some follow you home. Dark August begins with a fatal accident on a rural road, but the real terror starts afterward, when the man responsible begins to feel watched. A cloaked figure appears in the woods, a local witch offers help. But whatever's coming, it can't be bargained with. Though completed and released, the film vanished quickly due to its regional roots and the collapse of its tiny distributor. For decades, it was considered lost until a single surviving print surfaced, allowing restoration. What makes Dark August eerie isn't just its occult elements, but its tone. Quiet, suffocating, sunlit dread. It feels like summer stretching too long until something snaps. Some horror isn't loud. It creeps in like heat you didn't notice until you're burning. 11. The Intruder Within, 1981. It came from the ice. But what emerged was isolation. Set on a remote oil rig in Antarctic waters, The Intruder Within follows a crew who unwittingly disturb something ancient buried deep below the seafloor. As paranoia builds, something starts hunting them from within and without. The film aired once on American television, then it disappeared. No home release, no reruns, no digital preservation. The production company dissolved, and with it, all distribution rights vanished into thin air. All that survives are low-quality VHS recordings taped during that lone broadcast. For many, it became a cinematic ghost, seen once in childhood, then lost to static. A horror story where the monster isn't just in the deep, it's in the vanishing of memory. 12. Night Warning, 1982. She called it love, but it was something far more dangerous. Night Warning, later rebranded as Butcher, Baker, Nightmare Maker, tells the tale of Billy, an orphan teen raised by his obsessive aunt. But this isn't just a story about grief. It's about control, buried desire, and the line between guardianship and possession. The film was completed and screened, but the studio quickly grew uncomfortable. Its bold inclusion of taboo themes, homoerotic tension, incestuous undertones, and a twisted maternal figure prompted retitling, recutting, and near sabotage. The film was quietly dumped into a limited release, given no real chance to breathe. For decades, it lived underground, shared in hushed circles, misremembered by those who saw it, and revered for what it dared to explore long before mainstream horror caught up. Sometimes horror doesn't wear a mask. Sometimes it wears a smile and serves you breakfast. 13. The Severed Arm, 1973. Desperation doesn't just change people, it carves them open. The Severed Arm begins with a horrifying premise. 5 men trapped underground, starving, forced to choose one among them to sacrifice a limb so the rest can survive. Years later, they're back in the world, only someone hasn't forgotten what they did. The version that reached audiences was incomplete. Its first reel, a crucial section establishing character, psychology, and moral decay, was missing. Without it, the film plays like a standard revenge slasher, but those who worked on the production insist that the lost material recontextualized everything, turning the story into a psychological reckoning rather than just a bloodbath. No official release has ever recovered the missing footage. All that's left are anecdotes, scripts, and the creeping feeling that something essential was amputated, just like the character who lost his arm. When you lose the beginning, the ending stops making sense. And in horror, that's the deepest cut of all. 14. A Reflection of Fear, 1973. In this house, even the mirrors lie. A Reflection of Fear revolves around a fragile girl named Marguerite, living in a faded estate with her overprotective mother and a disturbing attachment to dolls and unseen voices. When her estranged father re-enters her life, the fragile facade begins to crack, revealing a twisted relationship riddled with trauma and denial. The film was finished in 1971, but released 2 years later, heavily edited. The version that made it to theaters was stripped down, missing key elements. A darker cut allegedly exists, more psychological, more daring, and more horrifying. That version was shelved and has never been made public. What remains is a slow, haunting descent into blurred identities and repressed horror. Sandy Dennis plays the mother with ghost-like stillness, while Robert Shaw adds gravitas to an already suffocating atmosphere. But it's the cut we can't see that lingers. What truths were left on the cutting room floor, and who decided they were too dangerous to share? Sometimes, the scariest part of a story is what's deliberately kept hidden. 15. The Astrologer, 1975. The stars promised greatness. What came instead was silence. The Astrologer, not to be mistaken with its identically titled counterpart, was a bizarre artifact written, directed, and performed by one man, Craig Denny. The plot followed a so-called visionary who uses astrology to climb to power, wealth, and eventual ruin. It's part sci-fi prophecy, part megalomaniacal fantasy. But what makes the film infamous isn't on screen, it's what happened afterward. Despite being completed and screened in select theaters in 1975, the film vanished soon after. Why? Denny had used licensed music songs from the Moody Blues, among others, without securing any rights. That decision doomed the film to legal purgatory. For decades, The Astrologer was thought lost, known only through whispers in collector circles. Then, decades later, a battered 35mm print was unearthed in the Academy Film Archive, an untouched time capsule of vanity and strange, dreamlike ambition. Watching it now feels like stumbling across a fever dream. Someone tried to erase both mesmerizing and maddening. It's not just a film, it's a mirror into the unchecked ego of a man who thought the cosmos were his stage. Some films fade over time, Others are swallowed whole by the very illusions they try to sell. Bonus pick: The Curse of the Blue Lights, 1988. Before this list concludes, there's one more buried relic worth pulling from the dirt. The Curse of the Blue Lights is the kind of regional horror film that feels like it shouldn't exist, shot by a small crew in Colorado, fueled by ambition rather than money. The story begins when a group of teenagers stumble across a corpse glowing with an otherworldly blue radiance. What starts as curiosity quickly unravels into an encounter with ancient horrors, forgotten rituals, and a monstrous force waiting beneath the earth. The film was completed, edited, and quietly released in a handful of local video stores. Then, nothing. No national distribution, no studio push, no preservation effort. Copies faded into obscurity, leaving only fragments of memory for those who saw it during its brief life on worn-out VHS tapes. For years, collectors debated whether the film was real or a Mandela effect hallucination. Then, a surviving print was recovered and restored by Vinegar Syndrome, revealing a scrappy, creature-filled nightmare dripping with practical effects that far exceed its tiny budget. Watching it today feels like uncovering a relic from a parallel timeline rough around the edges, but pulsing with sincerity and handcrafted terror. Some films are abandoned, others merely sleep, waiting for someone brave enough to dig them up. Some films vanish because time forgets them. Others disappear because someone made sure they did. If you've journeyed with us through this archive of abandoned reels and haunted productions, you're already part of a small group willing to explore the shadows most people overlook. And the deeper we go, the more secrets we uncover. Lost cuts, buried legends, and the ghosts of films that refuse to fade. If stories like these speak to your curiosity, stay close. There are still countless reels left in the dark, and we're just beginning to unseal them.